All right, welcome to Week 14 Forum. This week we are addressing various calls for reforming the intelligence community. Lowenthal, I think, expresses kind of a jaundiced view of reform. He calls it a catch-all term for a lot of different proposals with a lot of different motivations. He cites Richard Best's study which concludes that there are three broad chronological motivations for reforming the intelligence community. To improve the efficiency of the intelligence community in the context of the Cold War, to respond to specific intelligence failures or improprieties, including the Bay of Pigs, the Family Jewels report, the Iran-Contra affair, 9/11, and others, and to refocus the intelligence community requirements and structure in the post-Cold War era. The rest of this relatively short chapter deals with some of the problem areas that we've periodically noted over the course of the semester. And the first issue, of course, is the Director of National Intelligence and the office of the Director of National Intelligence's relationship with the Director of Central Intelligence. Has the ODNI managed to gather the reins of intelligence, or the reins of power, as the Intelligence Reform and Terrorism Prevention Act intended? What are the persistent reasons why, as a political office, the ODNI has really failed to assert directional control over the intelligence community? And I think we can, probably all have a good idea about why that is. Certainly the problem is the DCI has frequently been favored by the president, and in a lot of instances, the hard reality is that the Secretary of Defense continues to control a disproportionate amount of the intelligence community's budget. So it's kind of hard to be a director, and it's a small office too. So even from a staffing perspective, the notion that the director of national intelligence was somehow going to, become the pinnacle of the pyramid. Well, first of all, a pyramid is one structure, and the intelligence community is most decisively not one structure. So that's part of the issue. Another issue that Lowenthal addresses is the problem of stovepipes. How do you prevent stovepipes from forming? To some extent, is stovepiping kind of an inevitable feature of having a decentralized intelligence community that serves multiple masters? Is it conceivable that any particular proposed cure for stovepiping might actually be worse than the disease? I think he suggests a couple of different possible ways of preventing stovepiping. One, that all of the SIGINT capabilities should be gathered into one agency or one program, be it NSA or some hybrid, kind of like a fusion center. Should all the human capabilities be given either to the CIA's Directorate of Operations or the DIA's Defense Clandestine Services? Why or why not? Again, the problem there is, if you take it away from CIA, they will scream and say that they're being denied necessary assets. And if you take it away from defense, they're going to scream the same way. So it's really hard to say that centralization is going to solve stovepiping. One of the biggest problems within the intelligence community is analysis related. The lack of experienced analysts is a serious problem resulting from a cohort gap that opened as a result of cuts to the intelligence community during the 1990s. How do you close that gap? How do you recruit, train, staff these people, and then, prevent the kind of penetrations that a massive influx of new personnel would inevitably, create? One interesting reform that Clapper instituted is the idea of fusion centers, where members from different agencies are assigned to a regional or an issue-based center as a way of encouraging better coordination. This is very similar to what the Defense Department has done in the aftermath of the Goldwater-Nichols Act with its emphasis on jointness. How is that reform working out? I mean, this sounds actually like a good idea. So, I'd be interested to hear, and I'm actually looking around to see evaluations of that. To me, the IT revolution presents a similar challenge to the intelligence community. The intelligence community is increasingly technology reliant, if not dependent. And the Snowden scandal demonstrated that the NSA, at minimum, was dependent on technology and on technicians, and not nearly sophisticated in its security protocols for ensuring that IT specialists like Snowden weren't stealing huge caches of classified documents. This is a part of a broader problem with many government agencies. Their technology budgets are often insufficient for them to stay current on both hardware and software related technology. Likewise, the technology heavy agencies in the intelligence community have to maintain close tabs on, various innovation centers. Not everything is going to come, out of Silicon Valley. There are innovations happening all over the place, and they have to be aware of that, and they have to stay abreast of that, and they have to keep these avenues of innovation open so that as a government agency, they're not becoming, moribund and technologically niched. What do you think of the IC's attempt to develop the Intelligence Community Information Technology Enterprise, otherwise known as ISITE? What is this reform attempting to achieve? What do you think are some of the advantages and disadvantages of this kind of program? What kinds of administrative reforms does Lowenthal survey in this chapter? How can you, again, effectively recruit the right kinds of personnel, get them trained, and keep them in place long enough to develop the kind of expertise that only training combined with experience can provide? Someone who was in, one of the earlier national security classes pointed out to me the 2 out of 3 problem. Generally, with valuable goods that are difficult to produce, you can either get fast, cheap, or good. You can never get 2 out of the 3, or you can never get more than 2 out of the 3. So if that's the case, fast, cheap, or good, which of the 2 are you looking for? It's a tough question. So hopefully I've given you plenty to think about and discuss. Remember, I will be more forgiving in this week's forum. If you don't post Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, that's going to be okay for this week. But you will need to make your initial post by Tuesday. And I do expect to see 4 posts by Sunday, by midnight Sunday. As always, if you have any questions about the reading or anything else, ask me in the forum, and I'll be happy to answer.